We'd like to welcome each and every individual to Voices of Integrity. That's what it is. It's Voices of Integrity. And so if you're looking for some type of a podcast where it's weak and wimpy and you're just going to feel good about yourself, this probably isn't going to be the podcast. Um, the we're going through the books and the movies, and so today's is going to be Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And I was familiar with this book, but I had never read this. I don't know, 15, 20 years ago. And Tom Kuntz, one of my good friends and mentor, he went ahead and said, "Mark, you haven't read Think and Grow Rich?" I'm like, "No." He's like, "You need to read it." So I did. Um, and why didn't I read it before? Because I thought that it was about money, making money. And money is not, I did a values inventory, I don't know, 15 years ago. And it wasn't a Christian one. It was just a values inventory. There are 30 values, and the number one value they came up was spirituality for me. And number 30 value was money. And so money, I value what money can do, leveraging money. I don't have anything against money. But this book, I'm telling you, it's crazy. So Napoleon Hill, um, he went ahead and studied all of the very wealthy people, the Vanderbilts, um, the what were the other ones? The oil barons and Henry Ford. And so he studied all of these very wealthy people, and he's like, they think differently. They think really, really differently. And he studied those and he put that all into a book. And I'm like, how do you have 3 bachelor's degrees in business and not read this book? Like, really? Like, this should be required reading for every grade school student. Like, I'm serious. Like, this is a crazy, crazy cool book to read. Has anybody else read this book?
Just parts of it.
Okay. Anybody have any thoughts on what you read about it or parts of it?
I think when you realize, like you said, you thought it was all about money. It's not all about money. It's how you think about money, how you think about what you're doing with it, and how you think about the relationships you have in them. When you're dealing with money.
Got it. Anybody else have any thoughts about it?
I would say from what I've read so far, it's about perspective. It's wrapping your mind or teaching your mind how to go a different direction, how to internalize it differently. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else have any thoughts on it? So it's interesting. You can interrupt at any time. So Norman's girlfriend, um, Marissa, she went ahead and said, I don't know, I think she read somewhere that this generation has a greater attention span than previous generations. What do you think about that, Luke?
I've heard something like that, but didn't we talk about that last week?
Why are you asking me?
Because I think you were the one who said it last week. But I think you said it's if something interests them. I think that they
Gotcha.
will.
Yeah. So if they like, I mean, they can play games for, they can do games for hours on end. So if it's fun, then they have a great attention span. If it's not, it's not. So I wasn't thinking of any of you, obviously. But on this, I was thinking nobody's going to read this because, young people don't read. And so I'm thinking, I wonder if AI could help. So in the past, we had short videos that were 2 to 5 minutes long. People even had a hard time sometimes reading that. Like, I have 10,080 minutes in a week. You want me to take 5 minutes before the call to actually watch a video and actually think and come prepared? Yeah. Anyways, so I was thinking for those that don't want to read the book, you go to AI and say, ask AI the question about Think and Grow Rich and see if, see what it says so you can get the essence of it without having to do all the work. Try to get the benefit from something without doing any of the work. Questions on that?
Do you know if it's on audio?
I'm sure oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a classic. So yeah, it'll be on audio.
Check it out.
Nice. Anybody else have anything on Think and Grow Rich? Okay, so next week. So it's interesting. I've been doing this Saturday podcast for years, decades, long time. And I don't know how long it's been, but I didn't send out a notice last night for this. And I wondered, is anybody going to notice? Is anybody going to care? Does it make a difference at all? So I decided to do a test. So, next week is going to be, the podcast is going to be on Rich Dad Poor Dad. Man, is that one crazy? That's a crazy book. Holy cow, is that crazy? That is like the coolest book. And so do AI, get the audio, get something so you can come prepared to discuss the book. And then the next week after that is a Thomas Jefferson Education. Cool book there. And so when we go through these books, it's how we think. It's learning it's one of the hardest things in the world. It's one of the hardest things in the world to learn how to do is to think differently. So there's a 7:00 podcast Eastern time on Saturdays. And it's going through a white paper library. And so here's one about trust. And this is like the most intriguing, this is like the most intriguing white paper on trust. It's how the concept on how we trust people we shouldn't and don't trust people we should. It's how we trust ourselves when we should and don't trust ourselves when we should. Interesting, huh?
Mm-hmm.
No, it's okay. I thought it was interesting. I haven't gotten through the full email, but just through the first couple paragraphs. If you send your emails earlier in the week, it gives people time to think about it. If you wait, and like it wouldn't be an interesting conversation to go ahead and say, like what's like, I'm just curious, like this just, and again, I've only read the first, 3 paragraphs. But in those first 3 paragraphs, it's like it's gold. It's
Well,
like
I'd say it's amazing that it's such a long email. I mean, I didn't expect such a long one.
well, that's just in the Boersma blood. Like
Oh, right.
that's just Luke following his uncle's example. Like I'm gonna write like Uncle Mark. Like is this from Uncle Mark? Man, right though?
It's funny. I didn't even want to. Like, I made that similarity. I was like, I don't want to do this, but I did it anyway.
Yeah. So that's another. It's Luke is starting to go ahead and think like Uncle Mark. Like it's interesting. Like Alvin Miller, he and I meet every Thursday. Very successful businessman. And I told him last week, I told him I didn't want to write the book, Clean Windows. He says, well, don't then. So I didn't. Man, did he start laughing. So normally I bring 2-3 pages every, week, but I didn't bring anything because I'm just like, he said I didn't have to do it. I'm sure when I stand before God and God's like, Mark, I told you to go ahead and, write this this book. Why didn't you do it? And I'm like, well, Alvin Miller said I didn't have to. And God's going to be like, oh, okay.
Why did you trust him?
Well, we trust people who tell us what we want to hear.
Huh.
So, like the people who trust us, they'll tell us we're amazing men. We trust them because they're like, they told me what I wanted to hear. So we tend to trust people we trust people who tell us what we want to hear.
And in this case, you didn't trust yourself, or are you just using this as an example?
Using it as an example. One of my rules is to do things I don't want to do, because in my life, I find that when I grow the most, it's when I'm doing things I don't want to do.
Which in this case, which one do you not want to do?
I
Do
don't
the
want to
book?
write the book Clean Windows.
Oh, okay. So why did
So
you listen?
So if I don't want to do something, I do it.
Yeah.
Because that's when I see the growth. It's amazing to connect with other Christians who, where they don't have that rule. They pretty much do what they want to do. And it's like, which if you want to do it, it doesn't really require any faith because you want to do it. And so it says, without faith, it's impossible to please God. So how much of our life is really based on faith? I mean, if you trust, like trusting somebody, it doesn't require, if you agree with what I direct you to do or give you advice or give you input, if you agree with what I'm saying, it doesn't require any trust at all. Zero, zilch, nada, because we agree. Trust isn't required until there's a disagreement. And so the people, like you, there's a high statistical probability you don't have anybody in your life that cares more about you than they care about the relationship with you. You think about that for a minute and you're like, huh, that's interesting. So I wonder if it's more, I wonder what's more important. If, um, if it's like disagreeing, we all understand, I think, about how we really shouldn't say we disagree, right? With somebody. That's just stupid and arrogant. Are we familiar with that concept or not?
It sounds
All
very
right.
familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll make sure that we are familiar. So disagreeing with somebody, what you're saying, what we're saying when we disagree is like if I disagree with Luke and I say, I disagree with you, Luke, what I'm really saying is I think I understand what Luke is saying. Luke doesn't even understand what he's saying. Not fully. He doesn't. He understands some parts of it, but not everything. So I don't understand what I'm saying. So when we disagree with somebody, it's just kind of stupid. It's arrogant. It's like, I know what they're saying. It's like, you don't know what they're saying. They don't even know what they're saying. And so I have a different perspective. And so when we say I disagree, it puts it into an adversarial, confrontational, and a lot of people like that because they love conflict. And so a better way is to say I have a different perspective on that. And so like when Luke said what he did about an impressive man, I'm like, I don't disagree with what he's saying. I just have a different perspective. Luke being the very curious person he is, because in the accounting degree, one of the first things they teach you, accounting 101, first class, is how to be curious. Because that teaches humility. And, every accountant I know is super humble. Holy cow, are they humble? Some of the most humble people I know. And so it's like,
I skipped that class.
What's that?
I skipped that class.
I think it's a requirement. I don't think you can officially have your degree if you don't have that class. You're not the only one who skipped it. Matter of fact, now that you mentioned that, I think every other accountant I've ever met has skipped that same class too. Now that you bring it up, like that would explain a lot. That explains a lot. So, anyways, like, what's more important? Is it more important that a man thinks he's impressive, or is it what an impressive man is, or is it more important for what a woman thinks an impressive man is? Like that, what a great date question, right? Like, I'm just curious. I was just thinking. And if you want to play it safe, you can just say, my Uncle Mark, or, Mark was saying, he asked an interesting question. And it's like Like, what's a woman think of, like, what's a woman think an impressive man is? Like, what a cool date question. Like, get what she thinks is impressive. Because I think it's like, but I could make an argument that it's more important for, a man to think he's impressive. I can make that argument. I can go into that space and I can say that's far, far more important for a man to think he's impressive. Or I could go into and take the total opposite and say, what a man thinks about himself, really, that's not very important. It's what a woman thinks. I could make that argument. Kenny, what would you like to accomplish today?
Um, I don't like. Yeah, maybe how to get to other people's level of impressive? Maybe.
The first step you got to do is you got to find somebody more impressive than you are. Then what you do is you just ask them, like, how can I become like you when I grow up?
Okay, Luke, how can I become like you when I grow up?
Luke's not. The other Luke's not on the call right now.
I was talking to you. Shocking, but I was.
I know. I'm trying to figure out if there's sarcasm here. I don't know. I mean, I would imagine staying on these podcasts and doing like the bare minimum.
What
Right?
about showing up on time? Is that in the bare minimum?
2 to 3 minutes late is ideal, but if you want to do 10 minutes, that's okay too.
See, isn't that
Gotcha.
interesting? Like, I'm so curious now. See, I took that accounting class, and I took it to heart. So I'm curious, like, why is it impressive to be 2, 3 minutes late, Luke?
I mean, it's just what I do. I don't look at myself as that impressive, like from Kenny's perspective, I don't think.
Whose whose perspective are you looking at it from?
I don't know the things I value, I suppose.
I'm so sorry. I was late. I was late and I messed that up.
No, it's okay. You're a woman, so it's
No,
fine.
it's
Nope,
impressive.
that was irresponsible on my part in every
impressive.
way, shape, or form.
No, if you're a woman and you're late, it's totally okay. You don't need to explain yourself and say how your kids and your husband
Oh, I
and
wasn't
all.
explaining myself. I was just saying how awful it was, like that I was late. That's so irresponsible of me.
Luke might be thinking, I can't tell if she's being sarcastic or not. Like, like
I
Ben
think
also says he's not going to be on, so
yeah, he texted me at 2:30 this morning. I'm like, really? Anyways,
Can I restart, Kenny? I
What?
think your question caught me off guard. So, is there something specific that you find impressive about me?
Um, do you like the honest? Do you like honesty or not?
Yes, on this phone call, I'm trying to challenge myself. So, yes.
No.
There's nothing that impresses you about me. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought so your question was fully sarcastic.
Yes.
Okay, then we're good. There's not really much to answer then.
so again, it's cool that we discovered today that Luke missed that first class because that explains everything, right? If he hadn't missed that first class, he would have a totally different response. So, Luke, if somebody doesn't find you impressive, do you just discard them, dismiss them, delete them?
Um, I think I have a few different defense mechanisms, if you will. I'm sure I'm asking myself, do I care if Kenny thinks that about me? Because not everybody thinks that about me, I don't think. And then if the answer is yes, do I like, what do I need to do to change that? And then am I gonna do that? Is it worth it? And if not, then yeah, it doesn't really matter.
So do you know how to make it matter?
I could choose that that's important enough to do whatever it takes to fix change.
So do you think you have that capability?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay. Can you show it to us?
You mean change it so that Kenny's impressed by me? Is that what you're saying?
No, that you actually care if he's impressed.
Um, I don't know if I do care, so maybe
No,
I can.
no, I'll go back again. I'll go a little slower. So do you know how to change your perspective from not caring to caring? Do you know how to control that in yourself?
Probably not because I'm kind of just going like I'm trusting myself to be like this is what you want. So maybe not.
Uh, when you're saying this is what you want, I don't understand that.
So like when you have an instinct inside or like really just a gut feeling like this is what we're gonna do, then you either trust that or you don't. And I think based on this trust paper that I was reading, most of the time we trust ourselves, even if that's wrong. So in this case, I would just be trusting myself that I don't care what Kenny thinks in this case.
Do you know how to change that to where you
I don't,
do
yeah,
care?
I don't think so.
Okay. Do you see how that could be beneficial to you?
If it was, yeah, yeah, definitely. Do you
Okay.
know how?
I do, yeah.
I would love to learn if you'd like to say.
So you connect it to something that you do care about. And you just say, okay, I care about this. So I think you care about your future wife.
Yeah.
So it was weird. I was talking to Alvin Miller and we were talking about the book Love and Respect. So what in the book Love and Respect, they said what every woman wants is love and what every man wants is respect.
Right.
And my theory is I wonder if women don't want love, I wonder if they just want attention. I'm just curious, it's just a hunch. But then
I'm
I
curious.
wonder, like God is saying this, and so I'm wondering if God is commanding a husband to love his wife because it's the hardest thing that a husband will ever do in his life is love his wife. And I wonder if he's telling a wife to respect her husband because that might be the hardest thing a wife could ever do is respect a husband. I don't know. It was just a thought. I'm just a week, like just a few days. Like it's like, huh. I wonder. I wonder if that's why it is. And so, if you connect Kenny to your future wife and say, "There's my wife is going to have thoughts that's potentially going to be similar to Kenny's thoughts. So therefore, if I go ahead and care about Kenny and know how to get his thoughts out, that will give me practice for my wife. Because if I dismiss, delete, um, dump, whatever, all the D's, Kenny probably doesn't care either. like, 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 like your dad went ahead and said he didn't trust Kenny, which is just intriguing to me. And Kenny didn't trust your dad, which was equally intriguing. I'm like, well, that's interesting. And I don't know that either of them cared. And so if we don't care about what other people think of us, they probably don't care what we think of them. And so it's just an exercise in so that class that you missed, that's the key class to being able to change something around. So you go ahead and you just become curious. So like I would become curious and I would go ahead and say, so Kenny, like, you don't find me impressive at all. That's cool. Why is that? Like, I'm just curious. Why would you say that? Like, I'm not angry. I'm not upset. I'm not defensive. I just am curious. I'm curious. So there's going to be times when you're dating a girl, you're engaged, you're married, and you have to be curious about her. If you're not, you don't care about her. She doesn't care about you. If you're
Okay.
not curious about her, she's not going to be curious about you, likely. So, Kenny, what is it that, why would you say that you don't find anything impressive about Luke?
Um, maybe that's a little like I don't know. I mean, maybe there's one thing or two things, but to me,
So,
I don't.
isn't that
If a
cool?
guy,
So
what?
just a second. Isn't that cool? So I become curious and I ask Kenny, and all of a sudden he changes his entire story. He goes from nothing to, well, there might be some things that I am. So just be me being curious, all of a sudden he alters his thinking or he sees things or other things. And so it's just being curious. It's like it's just cool. What just happened is just cool. Oh, so we've got to go into the next segment, voices of integrity for passions. Um, yeah, just so this is amazing. So share this with other people. Don't make a decision for them. Well, they're not going to be interested, or this is kind of weird, or they're going to think poorly of me, or whatever. Don't do that. Don't make a decision for other people. Just go ahead and pass it along and say this was an interesting, or this is strange, or I'm just curious about what you think about what's being shared, on this podcast. So always remember we can accomplish so much more together than we ever could on our own. This next podcast we'll go into right away. We'll actually dig deeper into what Luke and Kenny are talking about, which is really, really neat. Here we go.